You know, a prominent characteristic of Donald Trump is his great affection for broadcast media. While he often appears to be sitting around, absorbed by Fox News, he altered his viewing habits today. Rather than tuning into his typical preferred network, he was watching coverage regarding a significant matter involving Pete Hegseth and a serious wartime transgression. It turns out that the recent statements from Mark Kelly had a major influence on Trump's subsequent, rather surprising, actions. In a notable change, Trump publicly established distance between himself and Hegseth for the first time during his tenure as president. This happened while addressing correspondents aboard Air Force One, and the choice created ripples throughout the administration and further weakened the already vulnerable unity of his MAGA supporters.
Now, the Washington Post reporting that Secretary Hegseth gave an order to kill everybody on one of those suspected drug boats during the first strike in September. Are you calling for U.S. service members to actively disobey orders like those?
Well, if orders are illegal, not only do they not have to follow them, they are legally required not to follow them.
Do you think that constitutes an illegal order?
I think there needs to be an investigation, and I hope that the reporting is not accurate. I care so much about the United States Navy and those service members. This was an operation involving the most professional members of the military, U.S. Navy SEALs, who I revere. I hope and pray that this is not true.
Before delving further into Trump's remarks about Hegseth, it's necessary to examine what prompted this situation. Mark Kelly offered sharp criticism concerning the alleged unlawful orders connected to Hegseth. Given the gravity of these events, it's understandable that Trump felt compelled to act. While I don't claim complete certainty here, after reviewing the available accounts, I must say I find what I'm seeing credible. Pete Hegseth is being widely accused of being a war criminal. Frankly, I don't require official confirmation from the legislative body for that assessment. It's quite revealing that representatives from both political affiliations on the Committee for Armed Services are requesting and proceeding with official inquiries. That's true nonpartisan activity, and it speaks volumes about the situation. It's truly astonishing that it took the severity of a war crime accusation for some people to finally reconsider Hegseth's suitability for his role.
Secretary Pete Hegseth has personally threatened to recall you to active duty so that you can be court-martialed. Secretary Hegseth adding your video, quote, intentionally undercut good order and discipline. Did it?
I said something very simple and non-controversial, and Donald Trump said I should be hanged, executed, prosecuted. Pete Hegseth said I should be court-martialed. I mean, how ridiculous is this? We say follow the law, and this is their response. These are not serious people. And Kristen, this is meant to just intimidate us. We're sticking up for the Constitution here and the rule of law, and they're saying these folks should be executed for doing that.
We're discussing a figure who is currently on his third marriage, has been linked to 5 extramarital relationships, and is facing various credible accusations. Yet, only now are people questioning if he is the correct choice for the Secretary of Defense position. How could things have progressed to this juncture? Regardless, I am confident in the veracity of the reports. There was undeniably an unlawful directive involved, plain and simple. Credit is due to Mark Kelly for maintaining pressure and openly challenging Hegseth despite attempts by Donald Trump to intimidate him. Trump appears to believe his strategies will frighten Kelly, but that notion is quite absurd at best. It is particularly outrageous that Hegseth has even threatened to recall Kelly to active duty for a military trial. Seriously. Hegseth contended that Kelly's video was detrimental to discipline and good order, but Kelly's reaction was entirely reasonable and straightforward. Hegseth lacks the necessary qualifications for the position he holds. If you watched any of the Sunday political commentary shows, you would have witnessed extensive public disagreement between Mark Kelly and Trump. It seems Trump is struggling to manage the escalating scrutiny, realizing that Mark Kelly is absolutely refusing to back down.
If there were on the Venezuela boat strike, if there were a second strike that killed people and then a first strike, were you thinking that would be illegal?
I don't know that happened. And Pete said said he did not want them. He didn't even know what people were talking about. So we'll look into it. But no, I wouldn't have wanted the second strike. The first strike was very legal. It was mine.
It looks like Donald Trump is attempting to separate himself from Pete Hegseth, the man he previously considered ideal for the Secretary of Defense role. Trump had selected Hegseth because he thought he could motivate the MAGA core and project a polished public image. He even believed Hegseth could win over observers with his communication skills. However, now, with certain Republicans turning against him and pushing for inquiries, one must question if Trump truly wishes to handle additional controversies, particularly as elements within his administration show signs of collapse. The truth is, anyone who allies themselves with Trump is likely to be abandoned sooner or later. Pete Hegseth is now realizing this unfortunate reality. Recently, there was discussion regarding whether the military should have executed a follow-up strike after the initial one had caused significant harm. Hegseth asserted he did not endorse the second action, which only generates further questions. It's almost as if Trump is implying, yes, there was a first strike, but I wasn't responsible for the second. He is trying to portray himself as the one opposed to new military conflicts, as if the first strike was simply a mandatory defensive measure, and arguing that airspace threats around Venezuela don't equate to initiating a conflict. What is truly remarkable is how swiftly Trump has transferred responsibility onto Hegseth. Not long ago, he stood by Hegseth, stating those actions were justified, even posting footage of the aerial attacks. Now he is clearly abandoning that stance and allowing Hegseth to face the negative consequences entirely on his own. You know, it's somewhat interesting to observe Donald Trump's reaction to the recent criticism he's encountering. Following demands for inquiries from some Republican figures and Mark Kelly's strong efforts to highlight the problems, Trump appears to be getting uneasy about the way he is being discussed in the news. For him, it is always centered on media perception, correct? Therefore, he is now trying to draw a clear boundary, claiming that certain decisions were genuinely Pete Hegseth's. He seems to be asserting, no, those decisions were Pete's, not mine. He is certainly creating distance from Pete now, almost as if he is preparing to fully discard him.
Hang them, execute them, prosecute them. In my case, Secretary Hegseth said, prosecute him under the Uniform Code of Military Justice for, by the way, reciting the Uniform Code of Military Justice. It's obviously ridiculous, but this is an attempt to silence me, to get me to not hold this administration accountable. We have a president who doesn't understand the Constitution, who installed an unqualified Secretary of Defense. I cannot think of a Secretary of Defense in the history of our country that is less qualified than Pete Hegseth. He should not be in this position. He should have been fired after Signalgate, and now he should be fired again for this. It
wouldn't be shocking if he were considering making personnel changes. With his approval figures at some of their lowest points and a crucial election in Tennessee upcoming that could result in failure, Trump is probably beginning to consider that a major change could be extremely beneficial for his position. A timely distraction could redirect media attention away from his other difficulties, such as the economy or the Epstein matter. Instead, he can shift the focus back to Pete Hegseth and assign all the blame to him. In his initial term, Trump was known for frequent dismissals and high staff turnover. Surprisingly, his immediate circle has been relatively stable recently, at least within Congress. But now, with a few resignations and threats of more departures emerging, Republican legislators are feeling somewhat unsure about continuing to support him. They find themselves in a difficult spot when required to defend him publicly. So, is Trump currently evaluating his choices? On one hand, he could retain the current Secretary of Defense, who is not exactly a commendable figure, or he could initiate a fresh start and appoint a replacement. With the possibility of resignations looming, it seems more probable that he is leaning towards selecting a new Secretary of Defense if that action means avoiding the loss of the House majority and more investigations. Loyalty to Pete Hegseth is likely not a high priority for him right now, At this moment, it appears Donald Trump is moving in a certain direction, and it is not unexpected, especially given how Mark Kelly was forcefully criticizing him on television earlier today. Frankly, many of Trump's decisions seem driven by media coverage. Mark Kelly offered some very clear and unambiguous remarks, but the conversation became particularly intense when he brought up the president's earlier comments regarding executing, prosecuting, and hanging individuals. And you know what? I have secured an interview with him. If there are any specific questions you would like me to pose, please feel free to send me a direct message on Instagram or Twitter, or leave a comment below. I have many questions prepared for Senator Kelly, and truthfully, I am really looking forward to shaking his hand and expressing my admiration for him. This kind of assertiveness is exactly what the Democratic Party requires, and I will be highlighting it directly here on the program. If you wish to support this effort, hitting that subscribe button and giving the video a like would be greatly appreciated, and if you have watched this far, please leave a blue heart in the comments section. We must continue our efforts, everyone. Do not let anyone silence your voice. Until the next time we meet, goodbye.